Hello and welcome to today's tutorial. Today I'm going to be talking about setting up GUIs, or more specifically how to create buttons on Android using Gamemaker Studio. This isn't necessarily explained very well by Gamemaker themselves, or there's not a lot of tutorials around this. So I'm going to start it off by basically creating a new button. I'm going to call this button start game background, and in here I'm basically just going to put a very simple, I'm going to go 64 by 64, and I'm just going to put a very simple circle. Now I'm actually going to animate this so you guys get some more perspective, so I'm just going to go very quickly, shrink to center over 20, and then I'm going to stop it at about 9, and I'm going to add a reverse. And you can see there I've got a nice little animation going. I'm going to center that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm basically going to make a start button, but not a background. Start game. I'm going to call this mask. So I'm going to use that. With Android you need to use, or basically mobile, you need to use collision checking with mouse clicks. So that's basically what I'm going to show you guys how to do. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go start button text. I want text. And I'm just going to put in here in 64 and 64. Start. Make this 20 odd ish, and game. And game's a bit big, so I'm going to drop that down to 16, and that will give it some sort of effect. Now I'm going to make sure I center that, and now let's get into the real issue here that we have to do. So I'm going to create an object called start. Button. Now, traditionally you give it a sprite. Now I'm going to use my mask. In my create, I'm also going to create a mask index, and I'm just going to store my mask sprite in that index, and that gets important later. Basically that's all I need to do there. Now the important thing when you're creating a button, especially for Android I suppose, or mobile, we'll stick with mobile, not Android, you need to be a bit more clever than you would on PC, because traditionally in Gamemaker, PC, you've just got a mouse click button. Now, I've never liked that function personally. I've just never used it. I just create my own. That's just the way I've done it. I'm not saying you have to. That's just the way I do it. But for this, the way I do it actually basically fixed a problem for me when I had an issue with trying to translate over. I spent about a week trying to think about the best way to basically put a button on mobile, because you've got these things called virtual buttons, but from as much as I've seen, no one really knows how to use them on the forums, and no one does use them. So it can be a bit of a hassle. So as you can see here, I've just set up two sprites. I've set up a draw sprite with my animation, which is the first one, and then I've got a draw sprite text. And what we're going to do is we're just going to look at what this does. So I'm just going to go start, and then if I was to push this over to Android, that is the tablet I test on from memory size. And you can see this is quite small, so traditionally I'd make it larger as well. But let's see what this does. So you can see I've got this, and important here, no animation. Now, I don't know if this is a bug or just the way I'm doing it. If you don't get an animation, so you can see there, I've got an animation now, but in here, I've got no mask, so I can't see what I'm putting in. The way I overcome this is not convoluted, but a bit painful, is I'm just going to go var index, or I call it animation or whatever. So I'm going to create a variable in there, and then in here, where my index is, I'm going to go and create a bit of script underneath it, go if, and it's sprite underscore get number. And what this does is this is a function in Gamemaker that we can call to then return how many animation frames there are in the sprite. And I'm just going to verse this against, if I don't delete my own work, var index is less than sprite animation. Now, from what I remember, it actually adds an extra frame at the end, so I just put a negative there just to drop it back and to fix it. I'm then going to copy that into here so they line up, and in here I'm going to go plus equals 1. Now, the other thing I've got to do here is I need to make sure I return this back to 0, otherwise it's not going to continue playing the animation. So, if I now launch it, we should see it's fixed the bug. And as you can see, it's working now as it should. Okay, now this is the part that gets a bit tricky. In Gamemaker, you get IDs. And I'm going to draw an ID. And IDs are basically Gamemaker's back end of how to manage each object in screen in, you could call it an array. Now, if I run that now, you can see I've drawn text 00 ID, which is up in the corner, ID 10,000. That should be this object on screen now's ID. Now, the other step to what I do here is I go draw, set, and I think I remember reading someone talking about, it was something else to do with mouse positioning and that, but I took the same idea and utilized it to my advantage, so to say. And basically, I'm going to drop it down to 12. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually now going to use a code called function called instance position. And because we're programming for mobile, we can't use mouse X, because mouse X on mobile doesn't exist. It's actually device underscore mouse X, and you got a raw and an X value. And this one's a little bit different because it asks for a device. Now, if you've ever played Fruit Ninja, which I'm pretty sure everyone on the planet has played Fruit Ninja at least once, this number here, the 0, is actually representative of what finger is on screen at the time that you press it. So, if I had, for example, another set of code underneath this one that's the same, and that was 1 and 1, if I press it with my first finger is 0 and my second finger is 1. So you can actually calculate it up to, I think, 5. I haven't tested past 5. But you can do as many as you want, I think. I'm not 100%, but play with it. That's the point. So here, because we're running it on PC first, we can do it through device. It's happy enough, it will read it just as a standard mouse X. And we're going to test this. Now, first thing we see is -4. -4 is an indicator of nothing. There's nothing there. But if I go over my object here, you can see I get ID that matches with itself, which means the mouse or the function knows that this is the same as what is up in the corner. And this is important because I cheat in a way a little bit, or you could call it cheating, because what I do is I take that little bit of script, I put it in a begin step, so I'm not using, like everyone else, these left and right clicks. I'm using a begin step. Inside the begin step, I go if, and I can put that in there, and I say is equal to, or absolute equal to, ID, or you can do self, which is the same as saying ID. Both of them do the same function. And then in there, if I wanted to then relate this to a click, so when I press the screen on the tablet, I'm going to go device again, if I can spell. And this time I'm going to look at a device mouse click, or mouse check button. And again, we're presented with this device. We're going to say 0 because it's relating back to the same as here. So this 0 relates back to here. So if we had another click, we can go position 2 and sort them out that way. It's very powerful. Mouse button left is the left click. So in here, I don't normally cache it this way. I actually just put it in the same, which is just putting this in here with this if statement and just saying and this. So it does both functions at once. But for this tutorial, I'm breaking it down so you guys can see each layer it's performing. So that makes sure I'm clicked on the right object or itself. Then I can proceed to do a click. And in here, I'm going to say, go to, no, that's command prompt, room go to. It's been a while. Oh, not yet, room go to. And I'm going to go room start. Now, I haven't created room start yet, so I'm going to quickly go here and go room start. And you can see my sizes don't match up, so I also create other stuff in here for things like matching up sizes in rooms in Android, because it can be a bit finicky with room sizes and stuff like that. So now if I do something in here to update it, it updates. So we've got that. Now to prove this works, I'm then also going to go create another button, and I'm just going to go, and this is just going to be some text because I'm going to reuse the assets above it. Button exit text, and this is to prove to you guys it works, because I can, or whatever. You guys would want to see that and make sure it works, so I'm not lying to you guys. So in here, I'm going to again go, basically I just need to say exit, dump it around there, and then I'm just saying game. So it looks nice and clean, nice and neat, exit game, and I can see it nice and clearly. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to duplicate this. Now, I would normally actually create separate assets for it, each thing here, but because this is just a quick tutorial to give you guys a breakdown of how this all works, I'm not going to worry about it. I did actually record one last night that was 25 minutes long with a very highly detailed instruction, but I felt like that was maybe being a bit too long. And that's why I'm back here doing it again, because I'm a glutton for punishment. And I wasn't happy with the finished product. So now I've got two buttons. I've got exit, and with exit you can see again it calls itself, but this time instead of doing that I'm going to plug in a different function, and this one I'm going to say game end bracket, which ends the game. So that one will exit my game, the other one will go to a start screen. And to prove it works, again I'm going to put exit button in here, and I'm just basically going to run it, and you guys can see exactly what it's doing. So I've got two animations, and you can see here I've got a bit of a mess, so what I'm going to quickly do is here so you guys can actually see what I mean. So remember I set two separate IDs, 24-ish I'd say. So now you'll see both different IDs displayed here. Very poorly. 15 and 32. Well, I'll say 20, just to help separate them out. So now, you guys can see I've got two IDs, and both of them are negative. If I go over this, it lines up with the first one, but not the second one. That one lines up with the second one. So if I click on exit, apparently nothing happens, which is strange. It should have exited. Let me just double check what I've written. Let me just put ID. And this is the nature of game developing, is always making sure to test and make sure things work. Because obviously you don't want to have... There it goes. Okay, so I didn't like self for whatever reason. I use ID anyway as a default. So you can see if I click exit, it exits. And this is the other important thing. If I click here, nothing's happening. Because the IDs do not line up with the next step in the if statement. So because it's -4, it will never pass this step. Start game, I go to a blank room. Very obvious because it's the next level. So the other thing is, if you were to, or if you're wanting to add in or change animations or sprites or whatever, so if you had a pause menu or a restart for a player, whatever, what you would do is in here, you'd look at the player, or you'd do something similar, you'd look at player stats, or you'd have two separate ones, but basically, I would just change out this sprite image and just change it between two. It's a very easy thing to do, it's not too complex. This breaks down the Android side of things, or the Apple side of things, or I haven't really set up the developer side for Apple, even though I own it. It's a hassle. Android's a bit of a pain, but it is worth it in the end. What I'm going to do now is actually record my tablet loading it so you guys can see it actually works on tablet too. So I'll be back in a moment. And as you guys can see, it's worked. Sorry about the shitty camera controls, it's a little camera I bought. But anyway, you can see it works beautifully, it does exactly what it's meant to do. It's nice and easy. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to like, favorite, subscribe, all the usual stuff. If you want to see anything else, ask. Questions are appreciated. Unfortunately, I am busy with other things like work and developing stuff as well. But ask, I'll hopefully reply within a week. And have a great day.